Over 3,500 years ago, Egyptians described the features of a strange skin affliction that affected its people. In some cultures, the condition even became a frightening inspiration for writing and artwork, such as this Nigerian mask. These were the first documentations of a disease that had followed humanity out of East Africa and spread along migrations, colonization, and slave trade routes. At the time, most blamed the affliction on sin and punishments from God. These misattributed beliefs caused those who were affected to be feared and ultimately shunned from society. They had to wear special clothing, ring bells to warn others that they were close, and even walk on a particular side of the road depending on the direction of the wind. Eventually, ancient Greece termed the affliction Eliphas. At the time, there was much confusion about what was actually considered Eliphas. The condition looked similar to several other diseases like yaws and joint evil. As civilizations moved into the Middle Ages, society began to take a closer look at the disease. Eliphas gained a new name as it became more widely studied, elephantiasis Grecorum. In fact, it wasn't until Dr. Hansen in Norway first saw the disease in a microscope in 1873 did any real understanding begin to take shape.
Leprosy is caused by Mycobacterium leprae, a rod-shaped bacterium with a thick, waxy layer of mycolic acid in its cell wall. The bacteria enter the body through inhaled nasal droplets and are engulfed by macrophages in the lung. The bacteria's mycolic acid prevent macrophages from digesting them and are passed into the bloodstream while still inside the macrophages. The bacteria double every 12 days, migrating towards cooler environments in the body, such as the extremities and face. From there, the disease occurs in two major forms, which depend on the immune response of the infected person. The more mild form, tuberculoid leprosy, is characterized by a high immune response that keeps the bacteria at bay. The patient can form red and purplish skin lesions that contain granulomas but few, if any, bacteria. The more severe form, lepromatous leprosy, affects those with a weak immune system. The bacteria in this form can manipulate the macrophages, epithelial cells, and mucosal membranes at the site of intrusion. It's mainly causing damage to the ears, nose, and throat. In both forms, however, leprosy causes both hypopigmented and hyperpigmented skin patches that are often characterized by a loss of feeling. This loss is due to damaged nerve cells, but the exact route for how it accomplishes this is yet to be discovered. Contrary to popular belief, though, leprosy does not cause the loss of limbs. Instead, leprosy attacks nerve cells and makes it hard for the infected person to detect secondary infections. The effects of these secondary infections, such as the loss of limbs, were commonly mistaken as signs of leprosy. In most cases, leprosy is a chronic disease that is punctuated by occasional reactional episodes that flare up. It's these reactional episodes that account for the morbidity of the disease. The type of episode a patient can experience is also classified into two groups. The first reaction type typically involves worsening of current skin lesions, production of new ones, neuritis, and sensory motor loss. The second type of reaction is found only in the severe leprosy subtype. Its syndrome resembles type 1, but also goes further to infect other organs, such as the testes, eyes, and joints, and sometimes may even cause the patient to develop leukocytosis. Mycobacterium leprae is difficult to study because it lacks the genes necessary to divide without a host cell. Thus, it must be studied in living organisms. Leprosy originally was a human disease, but in an effort to study it, red squirrels, armadillos, mice, and several primates have been infected by humans.
Historically, leprosy has been treated with combinations of segregation and exile. Biblical documents often speak of colonies of lepers, where the diseased were separated and never treated directly. The ancient Greeks believed in the humoral properties, where each person maintained a balance of fluids in the body. Leprosy was believed to be an imbalance and was treated with scented pomanders, blood consumption, and bloodletting that would return the person to a balanced, cured state. These humoral treatments were hardly effective, and leprosy continued to run rampant. Chalmugra oil was eventually used with moderate success against leprosy as a topical and oral agent. The oil's properties were formally studied and reported in a medical journal in 1854, even though it had been in use by India and China for quite some time. Early scientific analysis of chalmugra led to the development of other compounds based on the oil. The main goal at the time was to make the oil more tolerable for patients who found taking it to be nauseating. By 1919, esters of the oil were synthesized and were widely used against leprosy. In the early 1940s, though, chalmugra oil was replaced with sulfone multidrug treatments. Sulfones are a class of molecules that inhibit folic acid synthesis, an incredibly important process to bacterial cell replication. dapsone was one sulfone found to be effective, but it was quickly discovered that leprosy was often resistant to this drug alone. For this reason, multi-drug therapy was explored. In 1981, the World Health Organization provisioned use of dapsone in conjunction with two other drugs, rifampicin and clofazimine. These three drugs were administered in 6, 12, and 24-month regimens, and the concentrations of each within the regimens vary with the type of leprosy diagnosed in the patient. Tuberculoid leprosy typically has shorter regimens with lower concentrations, and lepromatous leprosy is often treated for longer periods. In pediatric cases, typically only 2 of the 3 drugs are administered, and again, concentrations vary with the type. In stark contrast to history, leprosy is currently a relatively treatable disease.